Om. 10 Commandments, Principles of Arya Samaj, Part 11. The third principle, the Scripture of Truth, Section 4. Science and language concomitants. That man led a highly cultured life even in such prehistoric ages as tens of millions of years back, hence is thus established beyond the possibility of a doubt. Our next proposition in this connection, which will elucidate our hypothesis, is that language and science progress together. Of scholars who have made this subject a lifelong study and whose opinion on it is accepted as authoritative, we shall quote the observations of only two. Says Max Muller in his lectures on the science of language, we never meet with articulate sounds except as wedded to determinate ideas, nor do we ever, I believe, meet with determinate ideas except as bodied forth in articulate sounds. Therefore, declare with conviction, whether right or wrong, as explicitly as possible, that thought in the sense of reasoning is impossible without language. Mr. Schelling, too, is reported as having expressed the same opinion. Without language, it is impossible to conceive philosophical, nay, even any human consciousness. Language, a human necessity. And without consciousness, there could have been no intellectual life, which every advance in culture by its very nature implies. Not a people on earth that does not speak. Language is as old as man. Where thought has degenerated and become meager in content, language has of necessity grown poor. The existence among a section of humanity of types of expression signifying a higher state of cultural life than the people actually lead is a sure sign of there having been among them a higher cultural past. Some very backward people like the Thonga, a Negro tribe living in South Africa, are reported to possess a language fairly rich in its variety of expression embodied both in grammatic forms and words. Henry A. Junod observes in his The Life of a South African Tribe, the power of classification of the Bantu mind, as evidenced by the classification of names in their language, is certainly not inferior to that of the Aryans. Speaking of verbs, he says, an endless number of combinations is thus rendered possible. Descriptive adverbs disclose a wonderful power of description. The faculty of elocution among the Thonga is very great. Negro languages are not inexpressive, they are rich in their way. They excel in discovering spiritual truths in material facts, or rather in perceiving the relations between the spiritual and the external world. Origin of language. This shows that language is coeval with man. Similar instances may be adduced to any number, but they will encumber the thesis. Let us now see whence language at the outset comes. Philologists who have tried to trace the origin of language have failed so far to account for the appearance of this, what is justly regarded by them as a miracle of humanity. Two alternate theories are put forward to explain this phenomenon, imagined somehow to have occurred in some early era of human history. The first of these is the theory of mutual agreement. According to this theory, man was at the origin mute. His earliest means of expression were gestures and conscious and unconscious alternations of countenance. As human thought progressed and became gradually too complex to find expression in gesticulation and facial distortion, words were by mutual agreement decided upon to convey ideas. This is the theory of Locke, followed by Adam Smith and adopted with adaptation by Stewart. We share Max Muller's failure to understand how, without language, complex ideas could have been first formed, and then the comparative merits of words suggested to convey them discussed. Another theory is the theory of onomatopoeia. The puhu puhu and bow wow are two allied forms of a single hypothesis. Language was framed according to theory in imitation of the natural sounds made or of interjectional exclamations uttered spontaneously under the predominance of a sudden feeling by things and animals respectively. The absolutely insignificant fraction which such words form any language and the inability to explain by means of them the formation of the bulk of its vocabulary is the most obvious refutation of this theory. Max Muller agrees with the Nairukta school of Indian philology in tracing words to roots. His own opinion as regards the origin of language, that language at the beginning was a divine gift. He subscribes also to the theory of a common origin of all languages. Of his lectures on science of language, he remarks, "It is the object of these lectures to prove that language is not a work of human art. If you wish to assert that language has various beginnings, you must prove it impossible that language could have had a common origin. No such impossibility has ever been established. The 400 or 500 roots which remain as the constituent elements in different families of languages are phonetic types produced by a power inherent in human nature. They exist, as Plato would say, by nature, though with Plato we should add that when we say by nature, we mean by the hand of God." Max Muller's theory examined. Max Muller thus believes that in the beginning there was a common repository of roots, out of which all peoples formed. In accordance with the promptings of their inner experiences and outer surroundings, their varied languages. Of positive evidence, there is none in support of this hypothesis also. Man, even in the most backward cultural age, is nowhere found to meet his lingual necessity simply by means of roots. As instruments of speech, roots are far more difficult to handle and manipulate than words derived from them. The conceptions conveyed by roots are absolutely abstract. Was primitive thought simply abstract? For if word and thought are simultaneous developments, which, as we have shown in Max Muller's conviction, then according to this last proposition of Max Muller, the subtle ideas which roots can stand for should inevitably precede those gross ones which derivatives from them denote. To us, the process of denotation and connotation appears to have proceeded together in the incipient consciousness of man. The easier process is that of naming things which to be intelligent must have as its background simultaneous apprehension of the connotative intent of the names applied. God named things, qualities, and actions and connected the names in the minds in the primitive stage of men and women with roots. To this, therefore, all languages exhibit the capability of being reduced ultimately. The primitive speech of man appears thus to have been a full-fledged language with noun forms, verb forms, prefix and affix forms, etc., etc. Roots could not have served the purpose of mankind in the beginning, nor could we have simply by means of roots learnt how to develop out of these words, clauses, and sentences. If uniform roots could be revealed to humanity, what was there to prevent ready made language from being revealed? The latter is, on the face of it, a simpler, a more probable hypothesis, a hypothesis too, which seems to answer human necessity more naturally. Continued.